Hey friends, today we are going to be working on our hands, and our hands are a gateway to our arms and our shoulder joints. So some of the things that we do will be really closely targeted to the shoulders, and some of the things will be more focused on the hands. But let's talk about what you need for class today. As you can see, it looks like I've gone to the grocery store for our class. So the first thing that you need is a massage ball. So this is a racket ball. You can also use a tennis ball or a dedicated massage therapy ball. And then a block is going to be helpful, but not mandatory. If you don't have a block, remember you can use a really thick hardback book, or a hard box of some kind. And then I have a can of pineapple rings here. It's making me want pineapple upside down cake, but any canned food will do. And then I also have a canister of quinoa. So this is optional. Especially if you have the block, you can sub the block for the canister of quinoa. We're going to be doing some pullovers later on in our sequence today. And so, if you don't have a canister of quinoa, you can use a bag of rice, a bag of beans, a sandbag, or just a block. And eventually, as you go, you might be able to look around your house and see some things like, oh, that might be good to try for the pullover. Maybe a small child as you get stronger as well. And then I also have a cushion and a blanket, and you could just use a blanket or you could just use a cushion. We'll need something to prop under the head for a little bit later. And then I also want something for me to more comfortably sit. So I'm gonna grab my cushion to sit, and we're gonna get started here with our hands. So I have been doing a lot of hand sewing lately, and my hands are just needing a little TLC. So if you are a maker or you're using your hands a lot, or even if you're just at the keyboard or texting or scrolling all day long, then this is gonna feel good for you. So let's start out with our thumbs. So you're gonna hold your left hand out and use your right hand to clasp around your thumb like it's a joystick. And then you're just gonna move your thumb around in a circle, like you're playing Atari. Try to keep the rest of your hand stationary as you steer your thumb around in the circle. And then go in the opposite direction and really kind of explore the edges of the range of motion here. So that might mean that you go a little bit slower with more intention. And again, you can go back and forth whichever direction you want. Okay, so now you're gonna hold on to your thumb and pull your thumb back towards your chest. Now, as you do that, don't let your wrist come to. You want to hold your wrist stable and just pull back on your thumb, and then reach your fingertips away from your thumb. Okay, so hopefully feeling some stretch across the base of the thumb and maybe into the palm of the hand. And just to sense how things are connected here in your hand, go ahead and wiggle your fingers and watch how the sensation of stretch changes as you wiggle your fingers. Okay, and you can relax that. So that was a pulling back motion with the thumb. And so now the thumb can also go, so if I'm looking at my hand like this, the thumb can move back, but it can also move out to the left. So you're going to use your right hand to push your thumb out to the left behind your hand. And here, hopefully feeling a little bit of stretch through here. And again, you can add a little finger wiggle to see how everything is connected. Make sure you're releasing tension in the rest of your body too, so soften your shoulders. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and release that. Woo! A whole new thumb. That's what it feels like. So if you just take a moment and hold out both of your hands and try to spread your fingers wide apart, see how far you can get your thumb away from the rest of your fingers. Can you make a 90-degree angle between your middle finger and your thumb? I can't quite, but it is something to think about and something to work towards. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the other hand. So right hand, you're gonna take your left hand to your right thumb, clasp your thumb and joystick, rotate your thumb around. Trying to keep the rest of the hand stationary as you go so that we're really isolating the thumb. And also trying to be intentional with these rotations so that we're finding the edges of our ranges of motion, maybe, in reverse. And you can also tune into the quality of the movement here. Does it feel smooth? Does this feel like a well-lubricated joint? Does it feel a little bumpy or like there's some skips in the joint? Does it feel creaky? Okay, so now we're gonna pull. So keeping the wrist stationary, I'm just gonna pull the thumb back towards my chest and reach my fingers away from my thumb, away from my chest. So it's this motion, okay? Notice I'm not bending my wrist to bring my thumb back. I'm keeping my wrist right where it is and just bringing the thumb back that way and reaching the fingers away to feel that stretch. Okay, you can wiggle your fingers here and see if you can feel how things are connected, the pathways of the muscles in your hands. Okay, and now let's go ahead and release that. So we're gonna now take the thumb out to the right. So it's gonna come behind the palm. So I'm gonna use my arm is starting to feel tired from holding my arm up like this. So I'm gonna lock my elbow into my side so that it doesn't move, and then I'm kind of using my torso to stabilize my shoulder and I don't have to work as hard. So I'm gonna lock in here and I'm gonna use my left hand to push my thumb over to the right so that my thumb angles to the outside of my palm. Noticing that stretch. And again, you can wiggle your fingers and see how things are connected. Okay, let's release that, shake it out. Now let's go ahead and hold the hands up again and see if we can get any closer to that 90-degree angle. Getting there, getting a little, I've noticed a little increase in this angle here on my right hand. Not so much on my left hand, that's okay. Now, so if you look at the back of your hand, you can see that there are some long bones on the back of your hand. And these are your metacarpals. And so in between those long bones is a little valley. Okay, that little valley in between the bones, that's where we're going to be working now. So I'm going to use my right hand, my right finger pads, and I'm going to feel that long bone that comes under my pinky finger. And I'm going to go over that long bone and fall into the valley. So this is the valley between the pinky finger bone, or the pinky finger long metacarpal bone and the index finger long metacarpal bone. So I'm right there. I'm going to fall into that valley. So my thumb is bracing on my palm, and I'm just going to push in very gently with my fingertips. Now, if you have long nails, this might not feel well. And one option that you have is to use a pencil eraser. So obviously with your fingertips, you can cover pretty much the whole length of the valley. With the pencil eraser, you're only going to be able to get at one spot at a time. But the pencil eraser, you would put your hand down on a table or on the ground and use the pencil eraser in that spot. Okay, so here we're going to use our fingers into that valley, giving a little squeeze, a little press, and then I'm going to wiggle my fingers. And hopefully you should be able to feel your muscles moving under the finger pads on that right hand. I think it's pretty cool. And then we're going to go over the metacarpal bone that's underneath the ring finger. We're going to go over that mountain and into the valley, the next valley. So this is the valley that is between the ring finger and the middle finger. And again, I'm bracing with my thumb. I'm going to give a little squeeze, a little press with my finger pads on that right hand. And then again, I'm going to wiggle my fingers. Releasing tension from other parts, jaw, face, shoulders. And then I'm going to go over the metacarpal bone that's under the middle finger, and I'm going to fall into the valley between the index finger and the middle finger. And again, wiggle my fingers. Okay, and then from here, you know, the web in between your index finger and your thumb, I'm going to use a crab claw from my right hand, and I'm just going to gently pinch it. And then I'm going to wiggle my fingers here. Okay. You could also flip your hand and do it the other way, whatever's most comfortable. There's really no right or wrong with that. Okay, and then we're going to go over to the other hand. So right hand up, we're going to use the left finger pads. We're going to feel for that metacarpal bone that's underneath the pinky finger, and we're going to go over that bone and fall into the valley. Okay, and then you're going to brace with your thumb on your palm, give a little squeeze, and wiggle your fingers. So you're in control here of how much pressure you want to give. If you're applying really light pressure and it doesn't feel like much is happening, you know, you can always slowly increase how much pressure you're giving to yourself, just as long as it feels well and that you can breathe comfortably. So we're going to go over the metacarpal mountain of the ring finger, and we're going to fall into the next valley in between the ring finger and the middle finger. And again, we're going to give a squeeze here, however much pressure feels good, and wiggle the fingers. And you're watching and feeling for how the muscles in your hand are moving under the pressure of your fingers. And you can, that way you can get a sense of how your parts move, which I think is really cool. This one's a little poppy. Okay, we're going to go over the next metacarpal mountain and fall into the valley in between the middle finger and the index finger. And again, so it doesn't take long. It can be really quick, just especially if you're wanting a move to fit in and break up some of your keyboard time or some of your computer time. You know, this is also something you can do under your desk if you're on a Zoom call and you don't want anybody to see what you're doing. So this is a nice, easy way to add a little bit of self-care, a little bit of movement into your day when you might least expect it. So now coming to the web of the thumb and the index finger, take your crab claw, or this is a getcha bug actually. Take your getcha bug and pinch that webbed spot, that webbed squishy spot in between the index finger and the thumb. And then again, you can move your thumb, wiggle your fingers, feel your muscles moving under your fingers. You can also do it with your palm facing away from you, you know, whichever one feels more comfortable. Okay, and now we're gonna check in with our angles in our hands. Let's see if there's any change. So still not really much change, still feeling for me a lot more freedom in the right hand than in the left hand, but based on what I know about my body, that makes sense to me. So now I'm gonna roll up my sleeves so that we can see the forearms here. Now we're gonna take our elbows together and the palms together, okay? So from here, let's peel the hands apart as far as we can while keeping the wrists together. And so I can peel my hands further apart if I let my fingers bend like this. Let's see how far you can go while keeping your hands straight. Okay, so now look at that angle that you have in your wrist, this angle right here, and think about the angle that your wrists are in most of the day. So like, especially if you're on the keyboard, think about that angle, think about that shape, and then think about the angle or the shape that your wrist takes when you put your hands on the ground, okay? So if you're doing like all fours or a plank, your wrist is more here, 90 degrees, okay? So can you actively get your hands and wrists into that shape, or are you reliant on gravity to do that for you? So that's some interesting information to note, especially if you are having trouble with your wrists in positions like all fours or plank. And we'll show what you can do about that in a few minutes. So now let's go ahead and get our therapy ball. I'm gonna scoot back a little. So here, I'm gonna put the ball on the ground. If you're seated at a table, you know, you can put the ball maybe on your chair, or you just want it lower than your shoulders so that you can use your body weight to help us here. So the fact that this ball is really soft and squishy is gonna help. If you even have one of those like foam golf balls, that's gonna be good too, or one of those squishy stress balls, even that's gonna be helpful. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the ground, and I'm gonna do my CPR hands here. So I have a flat hand, I have my left hand out on the bottom, and then I'm gonna put my right hand on top and interlace my fingers. And so I'm gonna try to get my joints stacked so that my wrists are under my shoulders, and I'm just gonna push down, leaning my torso forward to apply some weight. And so as I'm doing this, I'm kind of compressing onto the ball, and I'm doing a little bit of a roll, okay? So I compress and roll a bit, and then lean back to release, and I move the ball to another spot. And then again, I lean forward to compress, I'm squishing the ball a bit, and then I'm gonna roll a bit, and then lean back to take the pressure off. And I'm just gonna keep going like this, all around the palm of my hand. Oh, and it feels good. So make sure you get over here at the, this is called the thenar eminence, this big squishy pad here at the base of your thumb. Make sure you get over here. is there's lots of muscles intersecting at that thumb pad. And as you come up to the underside of the knuckles, you can always uninterlace your fingers so you have room to get at the undersides of the knuckles. Okay, I feel like I could do this for a really long time. So if you have a racquetball or a dedicated massage therapy ball, and you might be able to do this with a tennis ball as well, but with these kinds of balls on your skin, you can get a little stick and drag. So if you put your palm down on the ball, so you want the ball right in the middle of your palm, and push down, and then without sliding your hand, start to rotate your shoulders. So it's gonna make your hand slide on the ball, and the ball is gonna twist the tissue. It's gonna pin and twist the tissue of your hand. Okay. My hand feels so nice. Okay, let's go over to the right hand. So I've got my right hand out in front. I'm gonna interlace my left hand over it. So I have my CPR hands. We're giving first aid to our hands here. So wrists are under shoulders, and I'm just gonna lean my weight forward. And as I lean my weight forward, I'm gonna roll a bit, let the ball roll over my skin, and then release the weight back so that I don't, roll off the ball. Okay, so again, lean, roll, release. Lean, roll, release. Working all over the palm of the hand. If you've done the foot video, you can kind of imagine how this is similar to the compression that we do on our feet with the therapy ball. It just feels really good after all of the hand sewing I've been doing. Making sure to get over at that thenar eminence, the thumb pad over here. And if you go up to the underside of the knuckle, make sure that you switch your grip there. Okay. Now we're gonna do the twist. Okay, so you have your right hand on the ball, wrists under shoulders, and then without letting the ball slide, you're gonna rotate your shoulders. And if your hands were your feet, this would be kind of the motion of like putting out a cigarette. Feeling the ball grab on to the skin and drag and twist the tissue under it. Okay. Shake out your hands. And let's go ahead and loosely interlace the fingers and make some figure eights here with the hands. Can you reverse it? It feels weird, doesn't it? It feels weird. Okay. So let's just check in with the two kinds of tests, our angle tests that we have looked at already. So hold out your hands. Can you get to this 90-degree angle here in the middle finger and thumb? Do you notice any change there? And then bring your elbows and your palms together, and then open your hands without losing the wrist connection, without bending at the fingertips. No change. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my canned food. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my right hand, and if it feels better for you to get up off the ground and stand up while you do this, or to sit in a chair, of course you can always do that. You've seen me maybe rotate through a few different seated positions, so the reason that I like to sit on the ground while I do this is I'm still getting some movement from my hips and my knees while my main focus is here up in my hands and my wrists. So that's a little added benefit. We're being so productive, so efficient. Okay, so I've got the pineapple in my left hand, and I'm gonna hold my arm out. So I'm gonna move my thumb so that it is in a line with the rest of my fingers. And I'm gonna try keeping my wrist in a line with my shoulder and relaxing my shoulder away from my ear. Okay, so I'm gonna grip with my fingers and I'm gonna curl the pineapple can closer to my forearm. And then I'm gonna slowly extend the wrist as much as I can and play around with balancing the can on the fingers, okay? And then again, ground it into the palm and curl it up. So I'm gonna show you sideways here. Switch, I'm gonna do it this way. Okay, so got my wrist in a line with my shoulder. My thumb is in a line with my fingers, so I'm not holding the can with my grip strength. And then I've got my fingers gripped around the can, and I'm gonna curl the can towards my forearm. Now, as you do this, you might notice that your forearm muscle activates and bulges, one of your forearm muscles. And then you're gonna slowly release that curl, taking more weight into your fingers. And then, you know, kind of extending your fingers as much as you can without dropping the can. And then again, squeezing in, curling in, keeping the elbow crease pointed up, slowly releasing. And trying to balance the can on your fingertips. One more time. Curling, slowly releasing. Without dropping the can. Okay. Circle out that shoulder. Let's switch and do the other side. So here we go, right hand, wrists at shoulder height, okay? Shoulder is relaxed away from the ear, so we're not up here, letting that go. Straight elbow, thumb is in line with the rest of the fingers. Okay, and so I'm gonna start by curling, and I can see my forearm, this muscle in my forearm kind of bulges, and then gonna go ahead and slowly uncurl, seeing if you can extend the fingers any amount, and then curling the hand, curling the can up to the forearm and extending. Keep the extension process slow and controlled. Playing around with the balance of the can on your fingers. I'm noticing that I can extend my fingers more on this hand than I could on the other hand. So you can watch out for things like that. I've also noticed that I'm leaning back into the left. So I'm gonna try not to do that. Last one. Okay, and relax. Whew. canned pineapple. I mean, who knew it packed such a punch, right? Okay, so from here, so that we were working on the inside of the forearm and the palm. These muscles on the outside of the forearm and the back of the hand, they were working too, just in a different way. So now we're gonna kind of switch, reverse the work. So I'm gonna, again, hold the pineapple, but this time I'm gonna use my thumb, because I think if I just try to hold it like this, I'm definitely gonna drop it. And then again, I'm gonna hold it wrist in a line with my shoulder. So your shoulder is having to work too here, okay? And I'm gonna look at my wrist and make sure that it is a straight line. There's a straight line at my wrist. So the can isn't gonna be straight, okay? You can see that the can is kind of in an angle, and that's because my thumb is under the can. Okay, so from here, I'm going to try lifting the can higher from the ground by bending at the wrist. And so I'm seeing a lot of wrinkling at my wrist here. And then I'm gonna slowly, now here's the key, slowly release that contraction with control. And I'm gonna do that same curl motion that I did when my palm was facing the ceiling. Slowly, 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 slowly. As much as you can. Now curling the can back up to the underside of your forearm, okay? And then releasing that, and again, going to lift the can by bending at the wrist. And so here, as the can starts to come up, you should start to see some muscular activity on your forearm here. Slowly, slowly releasing down towards the ground. Keeping the forearm level. And so I would offer too that if it feels just way too difficult to keep your wrist at shoulder height for this long, if you have a table or like a narrow table that your hand can hang off of, then you can use that. You can rest your forearm on that, and then you can still get the movement and the benefit for the forearm muscles without taxing your shoulder so much, especially if you're feeling like there's a lot of tension coming up into your upper shoulders and neck as a result of holding your arm up. You know, maybe your shoulder and arm isn't ready to hold up a can of pineapples for this long, and that's okay. So you can, again, if you pretend like my cushion here is a table, it's gonna be ideal to have a narrow table that you can let your hand hang off, okay? So you can get that full range of motion. But even if you are just resting on the table, you're still gonna get a little benefit. But really the slow release down that is strengthening these muscles here in a long position. That's what we really are looking for. So again, the narrow table that your hand can hang off of would be a nice modification. Okay, so we're gonna switch. Right hand. Okay, wrist at shoulder height. Straight wrist. If I had a teeny mini level and I put it on my wrist, the bubble should be in the middle, okay? So here we go, we're gonna lift the can. Oh, this one doesn't wanna go very far at all. Okay, and then slowly releasing down. Slowly, slowly, slowly with control and intention. Releasing down and curling the can back up under the forearm. And you might even feel, depending on you, you might even feel a little stretch as you do that. And then curling back up, bending at the wrist, lifting the can towards the ceiling. Slow release. Slow, 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 slow. Relaxing tension from elsewhere. Last one. Lifting the can. So how could you fit this in to your daily life? Well, if you cook with canned food on the regular, you just say, hey, anytime I'm gonna get a can of food out, I'm just gonna curl it real quick. Curl it and uncurl it. Okay, and release. You could also do it with a water bottle. And so if you're not at home and your wrists or forearms start to feel a little cranky, you can just use your water bottle instead of, that way you don't have to keep a can of pineapples in your bag. So we're done with the can of pineapples. You can put it off to the side for now. And let's come back to our measures here. Let's see, can we get any more spread between the index, or the middle finger and the thumb? And then elbows and palms together. Keep your wrists and elbows together and spread the hands. Okay, so I'm seeing a big increase in my ability to spread my hands here. Hopefully you are too, from that pineapple can recipe. Pineapple can recipe? The pineapple can exercise. Okay, so now we're gonna do a little massage for the forearms. So we're gonna use the ball, and I'm gonna use the block because I'm down here on the ground. But again, if you're at a desk or a table, you probably don't need the block, okay? So I'm gonna get my cushion out of the way. Now we're gonna start on this palm side of the forearm where the elbow crease is, okay? And so I'm gonna turn my block in this long position so that I have more real estate, okay? I'm gonna put the ball towards the back, and I'm gonna put my forearm on the ball close to my wrist. And then I'm going to hold my hand at a stretch, hold my forearm at a stretch. Now it's a little wobbly, you know, it's not perfect. And if you lose your ball as you start to roll, that's fine. Just go and get it and come back. And I'm actually gonna scoot a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm gonna keep my hand back as I roll the ball on the underside of my forearm. And sometimes you might have to pick up your forearm and readjust, and that's okay. Just going up and down. So if you feel like, oh, this is just too wobbly, I have to use too much effort, get your pineapple can back out or get a rolling pin, and that might feel a little smoother to you, okay? I like to use the ball because it gets in to a little bit more of the nooks and crannies in your forearm. But again, something broader with more surface area and more stability is definitely an option. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to the other side. So I'm gonna take my left wrist down onto the ball, and I'm pulling my fingers back, pulling my hand back. So I'm working the muscles at a stretch, and I'm just rolling from wrist as close to the wrist and as close to the elbow as I can get. And again, if you prefer to use your can or your rolling pin, please feel free. Okay. Now, go ahead and stop. And from here, we're going to work on the other side now of the forearm. So this is the back of the hand side, the part of your arm that has hair on it or more visible hair on it. So this time on your block, or if you're at a desk or a table, you're going to put the ball down by the elbow. That's where I'm going to start. And so you can do this one of two ways. You can keep your wrist and your hand relaxed. If you tend to hold a lot of tension in your hands and in your forearms, that might be the way to go. If you'd like to maybe kick it up a notch and work the muscles at a stretch, then you can make a soft fist and lift the back of your hand away from the ground or the table that you're working on. And then you're gonna go, again, from elbow to wrist. You can still use the rolling pin or the can, but I will say that you're gonna use if you're using the ball especially, you're gonna find one spot probably that feels like the most interesting, we should say. And so you can hold there, and I'm using my other hand to stabilize the ball. And I'm gonna do some wrist movement. And I can really feel my muscle moving over the pressure of the ball. You can add your fingers here too. Can wiggle your fingers. Okay. And then let's switch and go over to the other side. So palm facing the ceiling. And again, you can just keep your wrist and your hand relaxed if that feels better. Or you can work it at a stretch with a fist and a bend in the wrist. A fist and a bend in the wrist. And then again, you're probably going to come to one spot that feels a little bit more interesting than others. So you can pick your spot and then you can stabilize the ball, or if you're using the rolling pin or the can, stabilize that and add your wrist motion. So you can do it with a closed fist. You can also add your hand or add your fingers into the movement as well. You can even try just wiggling your fingers and noticing how that action can come all the way up from muscles in your forearm. Okay, cool. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of time there. It can be a quick thing, but let's go ahead and check in with our markers here. So I'm gonna hold my hands out and see 90, I'm looking for 90 degrees from index, or I keep saying index finger, but this is middle finger to thumb. Okay, and then elbows, palms together, and I'm gonna separate my hands. Okay, I notice a little bit more range of motion. Okay, and now we're gonna do some wrist circles, but with a lot of intention. So I'm gonna bring my left elbow into my side, and I'm gonna hold my left forearm with my right hand so that that inside part of the forearm stays pointing up towards the ceiling. And I'm gonna make my hand like a karate chop hand, a blade hand. And then I'm gonna watch my wrist and my hand as I start to make a circle with my wrist. So it's just coming from my wrist. I'm not letting my forearm move, okay? Because I really just want it to come from the wrist joint. And we're just gonna do 3, going slowly and with intention, really trying to go to the edges of your range of motion. And after you've done 3, you're going to reverse and go in the other direction. Same thing. One thing that you can also do here to like a little cheating prevention is you can put a business card on your forearm. And if you drop the business card, you know that you were moving your forearm. Oops, I was just moving my forearm because I wasn't looking at it. You know that you were moving your forearm instead of your wrist. Okay. And then other hand, right side, elbow in, left hand holds the forearm. So you're gonna start by bringing your hand down and then going into your circle. Again, look at your hand as you're making the circle. This is helping your brain get more information. Moving slowly and with intention so that you are making sure to really hit at the edges of your range of motion. And you just go for 3 in one direction. And then after you've done 3 in that first direction, go ahead and switch. Without letting your forearm do it. I would have just dropped my business card, I think. So this is really great for a warm-up for your hands and wrists before you do like a hardcore plank workout or all fours, something like that, to really help get things warmed up. And when you do it repeatedly, you're like making your wrists smarter. You're helping your brain see your wrists and their ability to move more clearly. So let's just check in and see if that has changed the angle here. Definitely for my right hand. My left hand, not as much. Okay, so now let's go ahead and come into all fours. And remember your joint angle, okay? Now, if when you come into all fours and you are used to experiencing wrist pain in all fours, try recreating that joint angle that you can actively achieve, okay? So one way of recreating the joint angle is by placing something under the heels of your hands. Okay, but you have to, if you're gonna do that, it's not an opportunity to just sink into the heels of your hands. It's an opportunity to still try pushing through the fingers and keeping the fingers long and strong, okay? So that is an option. I am personally trying to focus more on this angle between the middle finger and the thumb, and I can focus on that easier if my palms are flat on the ground. So maybe you choose which one seems more important or which one you'd like to explore at any given time on the mat. And then you know, if I'm gonna work on my middle finger to thumb angle, then I'm gonna work with my hands flat. But if I wanna work on my wrist angle, then I'm gonna elevate my wrists accordingly. So choose your hand position. Choose which angle you're gonna be focusing on, and then load your hands so that your fingers are long and strong, and so that your elbow creases are pointing in the same directions as your middle finger. And then you can start to lean a little bit from side to side. Notice how far can you lean to one side before you start to lose those alignment points, lose the integrity with those alignment points. You can also try kind of circling around here. And so these are all things to think about when you are doing any kind of exercise on your hands, whether that's something in all fours, whether that's something in a plank position, even in downward facing dog and in a yoga class, you can keep track or keep these things in mind. Okay, so we are gonna finish up with some quinoa. Well, I'm gonna finish up with the quinoa. You can finish up with whatever you want. Let's get set up for this last thing. We're gonna integrate our hands with some bigger movement in the shoulders. So I'm gonna put my cushion back here. You can use a pillow or a folded blanket, whatever works for you. Let me grab my quinoa. And I'm gonna lie down on my back. And I have this cushion under my shoulders and my head so that I know that my rib cage is down and not flared up towards the ceiling. If I just have my head down on the ground, my ribs don't want to stay down. My ribs point up towards the ceiling, and I don't want them to do that this time because if we are trying to just focus in on the shoulders, then we want to keep the spine in a nice neutral position. I'm a little cold, so I'm going to put my sleeves back down. Okay, so straighten your legs. And before you pick up your quinoa or whatever object you're gonna use, we're just gonna explore. Turn your palms face up and lift your arms up and overhead as far as they want to go while still keeping your rib cage relaxed. So I could get my fingertips to touch the ground behind me, but I'd have to lift my ribs up, and that would be a back bend. And I'm not focused on that today. I don't want to do a back bend today. I want to nourish my shoulders a little bit more today. So palms facing up, elbow creases are facing in the same direction as the palms. And I know, okay, my arms are gonna stop here. And when I am really focused on the rotation of my arms, like even just this, my arms are shaking right here, okay? So you definitely don't need to hold anything here in your hands if this feels like enough of a workout or enough of a challenge for your shoulders and your arms. If you would like a little bit more of a challenge, one thing that you can do is you can use a block, and you just want to make sure that your elbow creases are still facing, when you're in the starting position, your elbow creases are facing the ceiling, and then they're pointing back behind you as you lift the object over your head, okay? So if you want to add something that's a little bit heavier than a block, you can use some quinoa or the like. And it's nice to use different things because then you have to hold it in a different way, and it's just a different challenge, a different load, a different experience for your body each time. So if you are holding something, you're starting with your elbow creases pointing up towards the ceiling, and you're gonna keep your elbow creases pointed in the same direction so that your upper arm bones aren't moving. And you can sync it up with your breath. So inhale to lift your arms overhead, and exhale to lower your arms back down. Now, as you're pulling over your head here, try to make sure that your rib cage is just staying down, is just resting down, but that you're not overly gripping through your abdomen to try to anchor the ribs down. And so here you can keep going for as long as you like. You can go to fatigue, or maybe you just fit in a few of these every now and then. So the challenge will be, as you get your arms overhead, can you keep your elbows straight? Can you keep your upper arms in that same rotation? Let's do 3 more together. Inhaling to lift. Exhaling to lower. My arms are shaking. Are yours? Okay, put your quinoa away. And you can rock up or roll over and sit up. Okay, one last bit here. So I'm going to roll my sleeves back up. We're going to come back into all fours. And I'm realizing that maybe I said like that was the last thing, and now you're like, wait, but there's one more thing. Sorry if I said that. I don't remember. Last thing is we're going to come to all fours. And so again, if you want to focus on your wrist angle, maybe prop under the heels of your hands with your blanket, or if you want to focus on the middle finger to thumb angle, you put your hands flat. Okay, so coming back to all fours here. And now elbow creases forward. We can really start to see how the hands are connected to the shoulders. So this is a little bit of a quieter work. If you push down through the heels of your hands more than through the fingers, what does that do in your shoulders? Okay, so for me personally, when I push down into the heels of my hands, I feel more activity down here at the bottom tips of my shoulder blades, here at kind of the sides of my shoulder blades. Okay, now put more weight into the finger pads and the fingers. And if you can pay attention up into your shoulders, what happens there? How is that connected? So for me, I feel more work on the front of my shoulder when I press down into the fingers more. Now, let yourself kind of roll over onto the index finger and thumb side of your hand. Okay, as you do that, your elbow creases probably want to roll inward as well. Okay, but you can keep them pointing forward and noticing where you feel that in your shoulders. And then putting more weight onto the pinky finger side of the hand. And where does that show up for you in your shoulders? Okay. And then take a break, get off your hands for just a moment, shake them out if you need to. And then we're gonna come back to hands and knees and sense down into your hands and notice where most of your pressure is in your hand. And it might be different on one hand than the other. And then you can play around with making that a little bit more balanced. So for me personally, I feel more weight in the heel of my right hand, on the pinky finger side of the heel of my right hand. And then I feel more weight on the pinky finger knuckle of my left hand. So I'm gonna see if I can equalize a little bit. So I'm gonna press a little bit more through the heel of my left hand on the pinky side. And that really feels like it's getting my shoulders more organized. And then equaling out into my hands, into the fingers. It's hard work. My arms are shaking. Yours might be too, I don't know. Okay, go ahead and get off your hands. Shake them out. So I hope that this exploration of the hands and the shoulders provided you with some practical exercises that you can fit in to your everyday life for your hand and your wrist care, but that we also explored some of the connections between the hands, the wrists, the forearms, and the shoulders. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time.